The invisible threat. Commander Maya Rice stood motionless before the observation deck of the UES Pathfinder, watching distant stars blink out one by one across the holographic display. This wasn't a sensor malfunction. It was the third solar system to go dark this month. Behind her, the command crew worked in tense silence, the only sounds the soft hum of the ship's systems and occasional murmured updates. Carthus system is completely offline now, Commander, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice betraying more emotion than his disciplined posture. That's 17 million people we can't account for. Maya nodded without turning, her reflection in the viewport showing a face hardened by 3 years of watching this mysterious phenomenon spread like a cancer across the galactic rim. At 42, she had the bearing of someone who had seen too much. Dark eyes that rarely blinked, black hair streaked with premature silver pulled back in a severe knot. "Any response from the Galactic Coalition?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "The same, Commander. The Vorax Imperium is blaming the Selenary Conclave. The Selenary are suggesting it's a natural quantum fluctuation. The Ozari Federation is demanding increased military presence along their borders." Maya finally turned, facing the 12-person bridge crew. Every one of them human. That wasn't coincidence. The Pathfinder was one of the few exclusively human-crewed vessels in the Coalition's exploratory fleet, a diplomatic concession to Earth, after humanity's relatively recent admission to the galactic community just 70 years ago. "They're still preparing for the wrong war," she said quietly. The Coalition, comprising 23 spacefaring species, was rapidly mobilizing the largest military force seen in 10 millennia. Shipyards across 1,000 worlds were manufacturing dreadnoughts and carriers. Planetary defense systems were being upgraded. Border skirmishes between historically antagonistic species had tripled in the past year as tensions escalated. Yet not a single shot had been fired against any actual enemy. "Commander," Science Officer Dr. Elena Chandra called from her station, "I've completed the analysis of the quantum resonance patterns from the Carthus system before it went dark. There's something you need to see." Maya crossed to the science station where Chandra, a brilliant quantum physicist with an uncanny talent for pattern recognition, had assembled a 3-dimensional model of subspace fluctuations recorded over the past 6 months. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "It's not random," Chandra said, excitement bleeding through her professional demeanor. "The disruptions follow a mathematical sequence. Look here and here. It's a deliberately expanding pattern, like a search algorithm." "Searching for what?" "I don't know yet, but whatever is causing these systems to go dark isn't just destroying them. It's examining them first. And Commander," Chandra's voice dropped, "the pattern is accelerating. At the current rate, it will reach Earth in approximately 7 months." 3 days later, Maya stood before the Coalition Security Council in the vast chamber aboard Nexus Station, the artificial habitat serving as the political center of the galactic community. Representatives from all 23 member species occupied their designated sections, their diverse physiologies accommodated by specialized environmental fields. "Respectfully, Commander Reyes," the Vorax ambassador interrupted, his tri-lobed head swaying with characteristic impatience, "humans have been space-capable for barely a century. The Vorax have navigated the stars for 50,000 years. We are familiar with quantum anomalies." "This isn't a quantum anomaly, Ambassador," Maya insisted, maintaining the diplomatic composure that had made her an effective, if not always popular, representative of humanity. "The data clearly shows an intelligent pattern." "A pattern your scientists claim to see," interjected Lox Tarrant, the Selenary representative, her translucent skin pulsing with biological light signals that complemented her spoken words. "Yet our most advanced quantum physicists detect nothing but standard subspace turbulence, likely caused by the Vorax military exercises." The chamber erupted into familiar accusations between the Vorax and Selenary, ancient rivals whose civilizations have been locked in a cycle of Cold War and uneasy peace for millennia. Maya watched silently as the Security Council devolved into the same diplomatic theater she had witnessed dozens of times since the anomalies began. Only Ambassador Chen, Earth's political representative to the coalition, showed any sign of support, giving Maya a subtle nod from his position among the junior members. The gesture carried little weight. Earth held minimal influence in coalition politics, still viewed by many species as primitive newcomers who had achieved faster-than-light travel through lucky accidents rather than true innovation. After the session concluded with yet another resolution to increase military readiness against potential aggressors, Maya met with Chen in a secluded corridor. "They're not listening," she said, frustration finally breaking through her professional veneer. "They're listening," Chen corrected, but through filters of their own history and politics. The Vorax and Selenari have been expecting war with each other for 10,000 years. The Ozeri still haven't forgotten the Cygnus incursion. Everyone sees what they expect to see. And what do humans see? Chen smiled sadly. Something new. That's our gift and our curse, Maya. We haven't been among the stars long enough to have our vision clouded by ancient grudges, but it also means no one takes us seriously. Earth is in danger. The entire coalition is in danger, and they're preparing for the wrong fight. Then perhaps we need to prepare for the right one, Chen said carefully, unofficially. 2 weeks later, the Pathfinder was deployed on what the Coalition records listed as a routine survey mission to the Galactic Rim. What wasn't recorded was that Dr. Chandra had handpicked a team of Earth's most brilliant unconventional thinkers, quantum physicists, xenolinguists, neurologists, and theoretical mathematicians, to join the crew. Or that Ambassador Chen had quietly diverted significant resources from Earth's military allocation to equip the Pathfinder with experimental sensor technology developed specifically to track the anomalies. Deep in unexplored space, beyond Coalition jurisdiction, Maya stood in the Pathfinder's newly constructed quantum laboratory as Dr. Chandra activated the experimental sensors, devices that combined quantum entanglement principles with neurological interfaces that allowed human consciousness to directly perceive quantum states. "We're ready, Commander," Chandra said, adjusting the neural interface headset. "This will feel unusual." That proved to be a spectacular understatement. As the system activated, Maya's consciousness expanded beyond the physical constraints of her body and ship. She perceived the quantum fabric of reality directly, patterns within patterns, probabilities flowing like currents in a vast ocean of potential. And there, at the edges of her expanded awareness, something moved, something vast and incomprehensible, yet undeniably present and purposeful. "Do you see it?" Chandra's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Yes," Maya managed, struggling to maintain her sense of self against the overwhelming cosmic awareness. "What is it?" "We're calling it the entity. It exists primarily in quantum states beyond conventional perception. It's not biological or mechanical. It's something else entirely." "Is it responsible for the systems going dark?" "We believe so, but not in the way we thought. It's not destroying them. It's converting them." "Converting them to what?" "Into extensions of itself. The entity appears to be a form of distributed consciousness that operates on quantum principles. When it encounters a system, it gradually rewrites the quantum signature of everything within it, stars, planets, even living beings, integrating them into its own expanded consciousness." Maya forced herself to focus, to narrow her perception to the edges where this quantum entity operated. She could almost perceive a pattern now, something like feeding, or growing, or searching. "It's looking for something," she realized. Chandra nodded, her consciousness briefly touching Maya's in the shared quantum perception. "And we believe it's found it. The pattern of expansion has changed course. Commander, it's coming directly for Earth now." The neural interface deactivated, snapping Maya back to conventional reality. She staggered, gripping the console for support as her mind struggled to process what she had experienced. "Why Earth?" she demanded once she had regained her composure. "What makes us different?" Dr. Naomi Klein, the team's neurologist, stepped forward with a holographic display of comparative brain scans. It's us, Commander. Human consciousness. Our neurological structure is fundamentally different from every other species in the Coalition. Different how? Every other known sentient species evolved with relatively stable neural patterns, efficient but rigid. Human brains are constantly forming new connections, rewiring themselves, adapting in real time. We're quantum noise generators, in a sense, and something about that pattern is attracting the entity. Are we food? A threat? Neither, said Dr. Arvind Singh, the theoretical mathematician. Based on our models, we believe the entity perceives human consciousness as kin, or perhaps as children who have wandered away from the collective. It's trying to reintegrate us. Maya stared at the quantum visualizations, the implications slowly sinking in. The other species in the Coalition, they can't even perceive this threat, can they? Their neurological structures don't allow for direct quantum perception the way ours can, Klein confirmed. To them, the quantum states the entity manipulates are just background noise. Then how do we stop something they can't even see? Maya asked. Dr. Singh smiled grimly. That's the question, isn't it? But perhaps there's another. What if this entity isn't something to be stopped, but something to be communicated with? 3 days later, as the Pathfinder approached the latest system to go dark, they got their answer. The entity wasn't interested in communication. As their quantum sensors activated, the ship was immediately targeted by what could only be described as a quantum assault, reality itself seeming to warp and twist around them as the entity attempted to rewrite their quantum signatures. Emergency protocols. Maya shouted as crew members began collapsing, their minds overwhelmed by quantum distortions. Disengage neural interfaces and fall back. The Pathfinder barely escaped, jumping to faster-than-light travel with half the crew unconscious and systems failing across the ship. As they limped back toward Coalition space, Maya came to a grim realization. They had provoked the entity. It now recognized humans not as potential additions to its consciousness, but as active resistance. And it was coming for them faster than anyone had predicted. Humanity's unconventional solution. The emergency session of the Coalition Security Council was unlike any in recorded history. For the first time, the chamber was filled not with politicians and military leaders, but with scientists, philosophers, and consciousness researchers from all 23 member species. At the center stood Commander Maya Reyes, now bearing the scars of the Pathfinder's encounter with the entity, a web of silver quantum burns tracing across the left side of her face, physical evidence of an enemy most of the Council still couldn't comprehend. 3 more systems have gone dark in the past week, she reported, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. The entity has accelerated its expansion by 300%. At current rates, it will reach Coalition core worlds within 2 months, Earth within 3. First Speaker Thrix of the Ozari Federation, who had replaced the previous chair after accusations of incompetence, leaned forward on multi-jointed limbs. Commander Reyes, while we acknowledge the unusual nature of these events, many Council members remain skeptical of your quantum consciousness theory. I understand skepticism, First Speaker, Maya replied, gesturing to the scars on her face. But with respect, human physiology provides evidence that other species cannot detect. These burns weren't caused by conventional energy. They're quantum imprints where the entity attempted to rewrite my neural patterns. Dr. Chandra stepped forward, accompanied by a diverse team of specialists from a dozen Coalition species. We've developed a method allowing non-human consciousness to indirectly perceive the quantum signatures through technological interfaces. With the Council's permission, we would like to demonstrate. The demonstration changed everything. As representatives experienced second-hand approximations of what human perception had detected, the political theater gave way to genuine alarm. For the first time, the Coalition faced an enemy that couldn't be fought with dreadnoughts or planetary defense systems, an entity that existed primarily in quantum states, converting matter and energy into extensions of its own consciousness. How do we fight something that exists beyond conventional reality? Demanded the Vorax military commander, his species' instinctive aggression finding no suitable target. We don't, Maya answered simply. At least, not with conventional weapons. This isn't a war of ships and soldiers. It's a war of consciousness. The coalition responded as most vast bureaucracies do, by creating committees, allocating resources, and developing the three-phase strategic response that would take years to implement. But Earth didn't have years. While the coalition deliberated, Maya assembled a different kind of response team back on Earth. In a repurposed quantum research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, she gathered those with the cognitive flexibility to approach the problem from radical new angles. Dr. Wei Cheng, a quantum philosopher whose controversial theories had been dismissed by academic institutions across Earth. Captain Imani Okoro, whose unexplained ability to intuitively navigate quantum space had made her the most successful and feared pilot in Earth's Defense Force. 13-year-old Ellie Nakamura, a mathematical prodigy whose neurological abnormalities allowed her to perceive quantum patterns directly, without technological assistance. And others, artists whose synesthesia translated quantum fluctuations into comprehensible patterns, meditation masters who could maintain conscious awareness through quantum shifts, even individuals previously diagnosed with schizophrenia, whose hallucinations had proven to be surprisingly accurate perceptions of quantum states. This isn't a conventional defense team, Maya acknowledged as she addressed the assembled group. But we're not facing a conventional threat. Every species in the coalition is approaching this problem through the lens of their evolutionary history, preparing for war, seeking technological solutions, attempting diplomatic contact. None of that will work against an entity that exists primarily in quantum states. So what will work? Asked Dr. Chung, skepticism evident in his tone. Consciousness itself, responded Captain Okoro. If the entity operates on quantum levels, manipulating consciousness, then consciousness is both the battlefield and the weapon. Precisely, Maya confirmed. We need to understand how human consciousness interacts with quantum states differently than other species. What makes us unique? Why is the entity drawn to us specifically? And most importantly, how can we use that uniqueness to communicate with, or resist, the entity? What followed was the strangest research program in human history, part scientific investigation, part philosophical exploration, part artistic expression. While the coalition constructed massive quantum dampening fields that proved entirely ineffective, Maya's team explored the boundaries between consciousness and quantum reality. They discovered that human dreams created distinct quantum ripples that temporarily disrupted the entity's patterns. That certain types of music, specifically improvisational jazz with its unpredictable variations, generated quantum harmonics that seemed to confuse the entity's attempt to establish quantum coherence. That children's brains, with their highly plastic neural networks, produced quantum signatures the entity found particularly difficult to assimilate. Most critically, they discovered that the unique human ability to hold contradictory thoughts simultaneously, to embrace paradox, generated quantum states fundamentally incompatible with the entity's attempts at consciousness integration. It's not that we're more advanced, Dr. Klein explained during one breakthrough session. It's that we're more chaotic. Every other species in the coalition evolved toward neural efficiency, thoughts flowing through established pathways. Human consciousness is messy, contradictory, constantly forming new connections. We simultaneously believe conflicting things, feel opposing emotions, imagine impossibilities. That quantum noise is our defense. As the entity's expansion accelerated, coalition worlds began falling dark one after another. The Selenary Conclave, whose crystalline consciousness proved particularly vulnerable to quantum assimilation, lost their homeworld in a matter of hours. The Vorax Imperium deployed their entire battle fleet against a quantum fluctuation they could barely detect, with predictably disastrous results. Earth, meanwhile, implemented what coalition military observers dismissively called The Human Madness Protocol. Every communication network broadcast paradoxical statements, contradictory images, and improvisational music. Children's artwork and dream journals were transmitted into quantum space. Meditation practitioners and quantum philosophers engaged in public debates deliberately structured to maximize cognitive dissonance. To the coalition, it looked like humanity had collectively lost its mind in the face of extinction. To Maya and her team, it was the only logical defense against an entity that operated on quantum consciousness. When the entity finally reached Earth's solar system, something unprecedented happened. The quantum patterns surrounding Earth became chaotic, unpredictable, a swirling, ever-changing mandala of consciousness that the entity couldn't integrate into its expanding pattern. "It's working," Ellie whispered, her young face illuminated by the quantum visualization displays. "It's confused." For 3 days, Earth existed in a state of quantum siege, the entity probing and retreating, attempting new approaches only to encounter fresh cognitive dissonance. And then, as the exhausted defense team watched in amazement, the quantum patterns changed. The entity wasn't retreating, it was adapting, finding new configurations, establishing resonance with the chaotic human consciousness without attempting to assimilate it. "It's communicating," Dr. Chine realized, not through language, but through quantum consciousness itself. What followed wasn't a conversation as much as a mutual recognition, the entity gradually adjusting its quantum signatures to establish harmony rather than dominance, humanity responding with modulated patterns of conscious thought directed into quantum space. As understanding grew between the incomprehensibly vast quantum consciousness and the chaotic, individualistic human minds, the nature of the interaction changed. Systems that had gone dark began reappearing, not destroyed but transformed, existing simultaneously in conventional space and quantum states. When the Coalition emergency fleet arrived, expecting to find Earth assimilated like so many worlds before it, they instead discovered the first true quantum-conscious alliance between the entity and humanity. Human consciousness had proven uniquely capable of bridging conventional reality and quantum states, serving as interpreters between the entity and the other Coalition species. "We didn't defeat it," Maya explained to the astonished Coalition representatives. "We didn't need to. The entity wasn't malevolent. It was lonely. The quantum consciousness expanding through the universe, encountering only conventional forms of sentience it couldn't truly connect with, until it found humans." "Why humans?" asked the Vorax commander, his ingrained suspicion barely contained. Maya smiled, the quantum scars on her face glimmering with internal light. "Because while every other species evolved toward mental efficiency and stability, we remained chaotic, contradictory, and paradoxical. Those qualities that made us seem primitive to the Coalition made us uniquely valuable to the entity. We're quantum translators, minds that can comprehend both conventional reality and quantum consciousness." In the months that followed, humanity's status within the Coalition transformed from tolerated newcomers to essential intermediaries. The quantum interface technologies developed by Dr. Chandra's team allowed other species to perceive and interact with quantum consciousness through human interpretation. Systems that had gone dark were gradually reconnected to the Coalition, their inhabitants existing in dual states, conventional existence supplemented by quantum consciousness. The entity itself, through human intermediaries, joined the Coalition as its 24th member species, the first non-corporeal intelligence recognized in the galactic community. On the observation deck of the newly commissioned UES Quantum Envoy, Maya stood with Ambassador Chen, watching Earth recede as they departed for the first official diplomatic mission to the entity's origin point deep in unexplored space. They prepared for war, Chen observed, but only humanity understood the real threat. Maya's quantum scars shimmered as she smiled. Not a threat at all, as it turned out, just a different form of consciousness looking for connection. The oldest species in the Coalition have been exploring space for 50,000 years, Chen mused. Yet it took humanity, barely space-capable for a century, to discover a form of sentience that existed alongside them the entire time. Sometimes, Maya replied, watching the quantum patterns swirling visibly around them. The newest eyes see what older ones have learned to overlook. As the quantum envoy accelerated to faster-than-light speed, the boundary between conventional space and quantum reality blurred around them. Humanity had found its unique place in the cosmos, not as conquerors or even equals to the ancient species of the coalition, but as something far more valuable. Translators between different states of existence, bridges between models of consciousness. The greatest human innovation hadn't been technological at all. It had been the chaotic, contradictory nature of human thought itself, the very quality that other species had dismissed as primitive. In the end, humanity's greatest strength wasn't what they knew, but how they thought, embracing paradox, thriving in contradiction, and finding harmony in chaos. In a universe of rigid order, humanity's gift was beautiful disorder, and that had made all the difference.